I'm Steve Lewis, one of the founder members of the 2i's pop band. We're going to trace the history, and we're going on a road of discovery to trace the history of the youngest ever pop band in the United Kingdom. Way back we started in 1957. And today will be literally a journey of discovery to show the roots and the profound effect this group had on the music industry during the 50s and 60s.
This is the day I shall remember, the day I'm dying. They can't take this away. It will be always mine. The sun and the wine, the seabirds crying.
This is, we had a hit with this.
Go for it.
That's Mel.
Who's laughing?
That's Mel Miller. He was always the joker.
Had many jobs that I didn't like so well. Slept in many floors, drove many miles. My life is
It's funny, but later on in the band's evolution, Rhett Stoller left and a guy called Roger Dean took over. And Roger was one of the most talented lead guitarists I've ever heard in my life. He was just absolutely brilliant. And he later went on to be with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, and he played with them for some time until, guess what? Eric Clapton took over from him as lead guitarist. So that was quite an evolution. Roger went on, unfortunately he passed away in 2008, but he went on to be a music teacher at a college in London. And he was honestly one of the most prolific lead guitarists I've ever heard in my life. He was just brilliant. And we're going to play a track of Roger's in a minute, which was just extraordinary. This is a great track. This is written by Mel Miller, called Kathy, and this was going back to the California ballrooms in Dunstable, and I think it was one of the owner's daughters, and Mel named it after her. And it's just a lovely track. Beautiful, 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 beautiful sound. And of course played by Mr. Rhett Stoller. Who else?
So this is before Hank Marvin and the Shadows, is it?
Yeah, this would have been about that time. This would have been about that time. Mel and I wrote a lovely track as well called After Dark, which never ever, I don't believe, I think we recorded it, but I've not even got a copy of that recording. And that was a superb track as well.
Was that instrumental?
That was an instrumental, yes.
How good was Rhett Stoller?
Well, in his day, he was absolutely one of a kind, because he heard Dwayne Eddy, and he was the first, I believe he was the first guy in the UK to actually start multi-track recordings. And it was just so innovative in its day that it wasn't done, but he was absolutely well known for it.
Did he do the multi-tracking in his own bedroom?
He did the multi-tracking in his own studio. Yeah, he had a studio. And it was very primitive in those days, because it was a 4-track machine. And of course, a 4-track machine, you had to keep recording over and over and over and over and over again until you got all the instruments and all the sounds you wanted. So it was a very, very long process. Today, I think you could do it at the switch of a button. But it wasn't so back in the late 50s, early 60s. So it was something quite new.
When you hear these original early records, what do you think? What goes through your mind? Are you immediately...
Oh, it makes the hair stand on the back of my neck. It really does.
Every time without fail?
Oh yes. Because this was real music. This was real music. This was talent. You can't put it any other way. It wasn't that you could find so many faults in the recording process, in the maybe a duff note here and there. But it wasn't perfect. But that's what gave it its magical element. That it wasn't perfect. It didn't have to be perfect. In fact, I remember on many Beatles tracks, the later 60s, they purposely put mistakes in. It was quite interesting, which of course you wouldn't get today. Everything has to be super clean and super perfect. And I don't believe that's the way music should be.
So you love rock and roll, scratches and all?
I think yes. I think that's the element of it that gave it its warmth. Also, the other aspect was, in these days, and when we go back to these days, everything was done on an analogue. There wasn't a digital production, so it was all done on analogue, which for my money was a much warmer sound. You can't, today digital recordings are too clean, too perfect, whereas we've lost the warmth in the music. And of course, it's interesting to note that lots of the bands from that era are still at the top of their game today. Some of them in their 70s. And I wonder if today's generation will have that longevity that the bands back then had. I just wonder about that, whether we'll hear of One Direction in 50 years' time or not. I suspect we won't. Well, that's exactly it. You could literally pick anybody off the street, take them into a studio today, and with the technology, you can give them perfect sound, perfect pitch, and they probably never sang a note in their lives. So, you know, it's not talent. It really isn't talent today. What you had back then, you had, and I do recall, Eric Burdon and the Animals, which is an interesting story, but they recorded an album in Euston Road in 3.5 hours. And on that album was a track called House of the Rising Sun. And when they recorded it, unlike today, they recorded it as a band, so they all played together and they had one take. And so the whole album was produced in 3.5 hours on a 4-track machine, which is quite extraordinary. Today, I think bands that produce albums are in the studio for 3 months or more, maybe longer. And every single instrument is recorded individually. And the reason is a very simple one, that these bands did their apprenticeship. There they were, out on the road, gigging night after night after night, doing their complete apprenticeship into the music industry. And I think that's what we've lost today, which is a great pity.
Is it true that they would be playing even the big bands at small trade halls all over the country?
Yeah, I mean, there were different circuits. There was a very, very vibrant pub circuit. There was a very vibrant university circuit and college circuit. And then you progressed into theatres and venues like that. Today, all of that's gone. You have a little, if you like, a little renaissance, if you will, of the pub circuits, and also, of course, you know, the big circuits, which are the stadium circuits and O2s and Wembleys. But you'll find that smaller bands will never ever get there. Whereas
so you're either a big band playing Wembley or nowhere.
Or you're a small band relying on iTunes and YouTube to get noticed. And that's why record companies don't sign bands today. Who would want to sign a band whose music is all over the World Wide Web? How are they going to make money out of it?
So it's still about the money.
The bottom line in anything is about the money, isn't it, really? It's about generating a profit, and record companies love to generate a profit. This is Roger Dean, a lead guitar in one of his finest pieces. Guitar, bro. Well, if you compare it, you go back to when this was done in the 60s, it was comparable to anybody else. And here we are, we're just approaching now Stamford Hill, which is a place that it all began. So here we are, if we take a nice panoramic view. Take a little tour just to show you that it's quite interesting. But there's some flats here we're going to come up to on the left hand side, and in that block of flats lived a Mr. Tony Hiller. And Tony wrote the winner of the Eurovision Song Contest, and he lived in this block of flats which is just over here on the left. My goodness, how this neighbourhood has changed over the years. But here are the flats here.
It was so wonderful. Oh yeah, really wonderful.
Now we're turning in here to Homely Road. And Homely Road is where my parents had their London flat. So here we are. We've arrived at the beginning here of the journey, and it's just to show where we started out. And number 1, Stamford Hill Mansions, which is just over there, is where my parents lived. And further down this road, this is where I had the pleasure of meeting Mel Miller. Now Mel Miller was going out to meet a friend one day, and this is how the origins of the 14 started. Mel lived at number 115 Homely Road, which is just down here. So we're going to take a shot of that as we go past. Morning, Rabbi. There we are. This is where Mel lived, right here, number 115. We're standing outside the home of Mr. Mel Miller, who was the original bass player with the 14s. Now I captured him one day. You see, he was going to meet a friend, and I had a call from Rhett Stoller saying, I need a washboard player. I need a washboard player. So I said to Mel, and in those days there were no mobile phones or internet or anything like that. I said to Mel, you can't miss this opportunity. Rhett Stoller needs a washboard player, and we need to go round to his house right now, otherwise you won't get the job. So I was responsible for introducing Mel into the music industry, which he stayed in for many, many years with many, many hits, from the 14s to Russ, Sainty and the New Notes, before he gave up. So it was an incredible journey, and this is his house. This is where he lived.
What number and what road are we in then?
We're in Homely Road, which is Stamford Hill, and we're at number 115.
What memories does it specifically bring back, Mel's house?
Well, just that we spent all the time in the world hanging out together. We really did in those days, and we were so very, very close. We were close buddies then, and we still are today. We've known each other for over 60 years, and we're still as close today as we ever were.
Have you got a message from Mel from his old home?
Yeah, it's a real trip down memory lane. Absolute trip down memory lane. No question about it. And it was the beginning. This was the beginning. This is where it all started. So now we are just going to go right round the corner to where Rhett Stoller lived, and where he had his recording studio, and we had our rehearsal studios. And I'm going to tell you a couple of funny stories when we arrived there. It is literally no more than 2 or 3 minutes round the corner from where we are. So we are now heading in the direction towards Glasserton Road, and here we are. We're just pulling in now. And we shall be making a stop here because so much history was made here. So here we are. We've now arrived less than 2 minutes round the corner to a remarkable set of circumstances. So here we go. We're now going to get out the car and we're going to have a look at Rhett Stoller's original house where he lived with his parents, Anne and Julius. So here we go. We're standing outside the home of Rhett Stoller. Now I want to tell you a couple of things. Number one, if you have a look behind you at the basement, that is where the recording studio was. This is where we had our rehearsals. And a little funny story, in those days, Rhett's father used to sell kippers. And of course, we couldn't afford at the ages of 13, 14 and 15, and as we were the youngest band in the country, to have a bandwagon to take us to gigs. So we used the kipper van. And the funny thing is, wherever we went, people could smell the fish. So we didn't get, in all places, a very nice reception. Now, interestingly enough, most of the people that are watching this video do not know this, but now I'm going to reveal something extraordinary for you. In this very basement, this is where Rhett Stoller wrote the theme for Match of the Day, which you'll all be aware of. You'll all know the song, you all know how it goes, but this is actually where it was written. And it's just a remarkable, remarkable thing that here we are standing in that very spot right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I wonder if you can help me. I don't know. This house, I understand you own it, used to belong to the Stoller family. Do you know?
Yes.
And do you know what was written in this basement? But do you know what song was written here? The Match of the Day thing. Do you know the song from Match of the Day? BBC television. I played in the band and we used, this was our recording studio in the day when the Stollers lived here. Barry played guitar, I played drums, a friend from Homely Road played bass, and we had a band called the 14s, and we were retracing the history of the 14s.
Right.
So I just had a word with your neighbour upstairs, and she said, you might know. I just wondered if, did you actually buy the house from the Stollers?
Yes.
You bought it from Barry?
Right, we went last
Yeah.
from the auction,
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
It was going back in 1996. So.
correct. He's now he lives in Woodford, or wants now from an apartment.
Yeah.
That's quite amazing. You knew it was a recording studio. This was the original.
There's still the seals on the door.
Oh look, the original seals that made it soundproof.
Well, there was a few more things, but we ripped it all out.
These are the original seals here that you can see that kept the sound in and the people out. So we didn't drive the neighbours crazy. And here, the actual studio was set up in there. The sound room was in there, actually through there. So through that part there, that's where the sound desks were and all the equipment in there. And this is where we used to rehearse. So we rehearsed here for maybe 5, 6 hours at a time. So it's quite an incredible piece of history.
Did you have egg boxes on the wall to keep the sound
Yes,
in?
we did. Yes, we did. And they came from the egg stores. And the funny thing is that Barry's uncle, Sam Stoller, was a fishmonger.
Next door.
And exactly. Thank you. You see another piece of history. And that's where we used to get the egg boxes from, the egg stores.
No, but the walls were also lined with black rubber.
Yeah, exactly. They were lined, but we used to put egg boxes up as well. We used to put egg boxes up on the wall just to literally to take the sound out. so that nobody got disturbed while we were recording or while we were rehearsing in here.
So how does this gentleman know so much?
Well, this gentleman actually purchased the house, I understand, after Barry had left. So he bought it then, and Barry's moved out, or Rhett's moved out to, I believe, Woodford now, and he's got an apartment out there. Well, I know so. I don't think so, I know so. But quite an incredible piece of history was written in this house.
So this wasn't there at the time. I put this in.
Yeah, these were just 2 rooms.
Yeah.
They were 2 separate rooms, one for rehearsing, one for recording, with all the equipment.
It was within the maisonette. It was a maisonette up and down.
Yes, that's
But
right.
we made it self-contained.
Yes.
So there used to be a steel going from there to here.
That's right.
It was sticking down the ceiling, and you banged your head each time you passed.
That's true.
So
That's why I've got no hair left.
So I put in 2 other steels,
Yes.
and I raised the ceiling here,
Yes.
and made it a bit more accessible.
Well, I'd like to thank you, sir, for your time today, and thanks for letting us in just to have a little look of how it's changed from 1956-57 up to 2014. Absolutely magic.
That was in 1996.
Yeah, you were here from 1996 onwards.
Yeah.
But we go back from 1956 in this very spot.
But this gentleman is a living link between you and Mr. Stoller.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because he bought it from Mr. Stoller.
Yes, yes.
So it's an amazing link that we should find somebody here.
Yes, incredible. Absolutely
It's
incredible.
actually amazing you found me here today at all, because this is my office.
Yes. Yes.
It was meant to be.
Yes, most definitely.
You know what they say was Bichette?
Bashir, yes.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much indeed.
have a good day.
Hard. So here we are. We're now leaving. We're leaving the house. And we've just really had a piece of history that we've now absolutely concluded that this is where it all began, and the links are just fantastic. So we're going to move on now, and we're going to move on to the Metropolitan Edgware Road, because that was our first big break. So here we go. We're going to get back in the car and we're going up to town. It's a bit of a tearjerker really to see the old rehearsal studio and where it all began. And you know, we're going to move on now because things happened and we got our big break. We rehearsed hard, we planned hard, we played hard, and then we got our big break. And we're going to the venue, which doesn't exist anymore, of where that big break happened.
When was the last time you went into your practice cellar, your rehearsal cellar?
That must have been about 1960. So that's quite a few years ago.
How much time did you spend in the cellar?
Oh, we spent nearly every day and night in the cellar. After school, we'd rehearse until late at night. The schoolwork went awry, as you can imagine.
You had your eyes on the stars, didn't you?
Well, we certainly did. I think we all did in those years. So we're heading up now to the west end of London, to Edgware Road. We're on our way.
What was that word you used for it was meant to be?
Bichette.
And what does it mean?
It was meant to be.
Why was it meant to be?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I don't have an answer for that.
Because
Well, because
It was meant to be.
it was meant to be. It was meant to be.
That gentleman should not have been there.
Well, there you are.
And without getting into the cellar,
I think when I get home this evening, I'm going to write a song called It's Meant to Be. I think I might well do that.
where are we standing, Steve?
Well, we're standing, this is the very spot, as you can see, the Hilton London Metropole, which was the Metropolitan Theatre, which is now of course gone, but in its place is this magnificent hotel.
Which still carries that name.
Which still carries the name, as you can see, Metropole, named after the Metropolitan. So here we are now standing outside the site where the Metropolitan Theatre, Edgware Road, stood. And this was our big break. In 1958, we got a week's gig here at a variety show, and that really kicked off our careers. The interesting thing, we had lots of agents attend during that week, and one of the most significant things was that this was a really hard-nosed variety show audience. If you were no good, cabbages and eggs and tomatoes were thrown at you in those days. Fortunately, none of that happened to us. We had lots of agents here, and from here, all of the work that we were to fulfill in the future weeks and months came to pass. So this was the spot that really kicked our careers off. We're now going to move on from here to one of the most famous venues in London in that era, which was the 2i's Coffee Bar in Soho. So we'll be getting back in the car now and making our way across to Soho. Well, here we are outside the famous 2i's Coffee Bar, or the site of the 2i's Coffee Bar in Soho, in Old Compton Street, number 59. And you know, when we first played here, we realised that we had arrived, and really arrived in the music industry. And so many famous bands kicked off their careers right here. It is just too many to mention, but worth reviewing to see the famous bands that actually played here in the 50s and 60s. And our lead singer from Russ, Sainty and the New Notes, let me just show you, there's a wonderful picture right here in Russ's book of Russ with Sir Cliff Richard, taken in this very, very spot, because this is where, this was the throne of the music industry in the 50s and 60s. We were lucky enough to play here, and one evening there was a very famous show in the West End in that time called Espresso Bongo, and the star of that show, a Mr. James Kenny, came down to the 2i's to sing with us the lead song from that show. So that was just a remarkable, remarkable incident. From this one venue, we got a complete UK tour, and we got variety spots in lots and lots of West End venues. And so, as a form of celebration, what I'm going to do now is to light my cigar to a wonderful, wonderful day that we've had researching the origins of the 14s. And it's just a part of history that I think should be carried on, and it's a memorial to that period. I'm happy to say that many of the original members of that group are still alive today, although over the years we've lost a few. And in memory of Roy Toft, in memory of Roger Dean, in memory of Bernie Martin, I'd really like to say, guys, I know you're looking down, I'm sure you're looking down on us on this very, very momentous day and occasion. And that's me signing off with the history of the 14s. And now I'm going to light my cigar. And that's absolutely beautiful. So here's to it, guys. Thanks a million.
That this was our lovely